Hi, this is the Beau Show. I'm Beau Mansfield, and this episode's guest is Ron King. Ron King is a 66-year-old African-American Oklahoman who has lived in Norman a long time, grew up in Oklahoma City, and there's not a whole lot I should say other than he's like one of the kindliest, most erudite, witty souls I've had the pleasure to meet in this lifetime, and I believe you all need to hear what he has to say. We recorded 2 hours of talking, and unfortunately approximately an hour and a half of it was intermittently corrupted audio-wise in such a fashion it's pretty much unusable. Fortunately, a lot of it wasn't the best part of the conversation. It's a fair bit of me yammering for no particular good reason. Other than just trying to make sure Ron knew that I was listening, that it wasn't just a monologue, that there was another human there. But I probably went further than I needed to, because when it comes to smart stuff, Ron King is the one you want to be listening to out of the two of us. When it comes to silly stuff, that's me. That's my territory. But anyway, the point is, please enjoy this. Ron King has been having some serious health issues, which I will put a link in the YouTube page here to the GoFundMe that I think you all should definitely pitch in and help him with, because this man is such a good soul. He's a bright part of every week, if not more than once a week, on Sunday mornings when I go to see him at the campus corner market where he works. The point, though, is that there's only one thing that you need to know, which is he makes reference to a poultry store, which we had talked about earlier in the footage. And the poultry store was owned in the 1950s when Ron King was a kid, about 7 or 8 years old, by an Irish-American gentleman who had been there for some time but still had a brogue. And this man treated Ron's grandmother, who would frequently take him to the poultry store with her. This man treated Ron's grandmother with respect and was kindly to her and helpful. And one day, in front of Ron, a young new employee of this poultry store was disrespectful to Ron's grandmother. Long story short, the owner fired this worker on the spot for his indiscretion, his bad judgment, his disrespect. And that made a powerful impact on Ron as a kid. So when he's making reference to an Irish-American attorney a few years later in his history, during the civil rights struggle, around the time when the activity was at its most fever-pitched, he had already had a good experience with an Irish-American in the Oklahoma City area, and that's what we're referring to. Other than that, you should be able to follow everything that he's talking about from where we start. And please enjoy Ron King.
When I was growing up, of course, a lot more money and probably much more fatuous human being. Because... I mean, this is just my off the cuff, but
I like that. That's speaking of off the cuff. I don't mean to cut you off, but we have about 10 more minutes before I have to go to work.
Yes,
or at least be on my way. And before, the thing is that there's the story of the bullet whizzing past your head.
Oh, yes.
And finally, before we, after we do that, I'd just like us to talk about how sometimes when I come in on Sunday morning, you'll tell me almost immediately, well, it won't have to be a Sunday morning, but sometimes it's Sunday morning, I'm almost surely going to see you on a Sunday morning. Yeah. And then you'll tell me about how you just got into a conversation with yet another older, usually, but sometimes younger, white person that just come into the store, and I guess that whatever's on the TV is something they're responding to, and they get into it with you on the order of what you'll tell me is that you have once again had to tell somebody that they don't recognize that their entire political beliefs are rooted in white supremacism or supremism. And so why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, tell us the story of when you were like 14 and then
it was not just that story. There was one that I probably haven't told you, and I can tell you very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I was, and I always have been a geek. I'm a black geek. I wish my old friend,
my favorite kind of black person, but anyway,
one of my favorite and best friends of all times is a fellow named Terrence Smith, and we became friends in junior high school, all through high school, and we came to OU together, along with two other people, Brendan Basie and Michael Reese. Who are all graduates of Douglas. I was coming anyway, but Michael got a basketball scholarship. The other two were recruited by Paul Massett. That's another story altogether. Who recently retired as vice president of public affairs. I think is the title. But Terrence and I just were interested in the esoteric. We know everything about Nazis and all that sort of stuff. So, black kids knowing everything about Nazis.
Well,
that we were not in favor of.
No, of course
simply
not.
wanted to know how they ticked.
Sure.
Well, I also developed an enormous interest in architecture and redevelopment in downtown Oklahoma City because it was such a dour and interesting place. And I.M. Pei, the great architect, who designed the addition to the Louvre and a number of other things around the world, was commissioned to do that. And I developed a friendship with a guy named Jack Bagley at the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jack was the public relations guy. He was the public information officer for the authority. And he started providing me with all kinds of stuff, and I still have it in my old files. And this is OCURI stuff, background stuff on buildings. The thing they gave out to all of the movers and shakers in the city, the I.M. Pei plan, I have that. And when they were going to build the Myriad, which is now the Cox Center, I was told that I could go over to the Chamber of Commerce Tourism Bureau and get some more material. So I go over, and it's on the second floor of the Skirvin Tower Hotel, which is one across the street from the Skirvin Hotel on Park Avenue. And so I go into the office, and there's this fella there, and he says, "Oh, yeah, Bagley told me about you." He didn't tell him I was black. Because I knew immediately, this is one of the things black people are good at sensing. And that is the shock when you go into a place and they were not expecting you.
Yeah.
and so the guy told me to sit down, and he started doing some weird stuff. And I said, well, I really, I'm trying to be the good kid. I'm 14 or 15 at this time. And I'm doing civil rights stuff. But this is another area of interest that I have.
Yes.
And I said, well, I really appreciate, Jack said that you would, and I remember him, you mean Mr. Bagley? And I said, yeah, Jack Bagley.
Oh, douche dangle time. Oh, yeah. All right.
And I knew exactly what he was doing, and I kind of played it off, giving the impression of being
servile or what have you.
Well, no, just like I missed him trying to admonish me for that, and
okay, which is even that's more, even slicker.
Oh yeah, it's even more frustrating because his whole thing was. Then all of a sudden he says, I think a lot of black women are Negro women or colored women, I don't know what. He didn't say black. Yeah. I'm pretty certain of that. Very good looking. But you tell me why all black men are ugly. You know.
Oh my
then,
God!
And then I kind of went, "Is this a joke?"
Yeah.
You know, this is a 14-year-old kid. This is child abuse he's engaging in at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so he said, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's offensive. And I'm going to leave. And he said, oh, no. You know, he said, I was just joking. I was just joking. And so he finally, he finally gave me what he told Jack Bagley he was going to give me. And I went back and told Jack that story.
Yeah.
And he was appalled, of course.
Yeah.
And the guy, I don't remember his name, and I've always regretted, he was originally from Alabama.
Uh-huh.
And he got the job as director of tourism. And I need to, and I've never done it. Now, it would be the easiest thing in the world to do.
Director of tourism for the state of Alabama?
For the city of Birmingham.
Okay.
And he got it.
Birmingham, the greatest city in Alabama. You can travel across this entire land, but there ain't no place like Birmingham. You know the song of Randy Newman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
it's not a total knock on the city, but it's in fact, it just doesn't really deal with racism. The song depicts a guy who is kind of like a working class Joe who is proud of his dog, proud of his state, likes to drink, and there's great things here. It's almost like he just doesn't even see.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way the song is.
Well, you know,
but anyway,
if you're not immediately affected, but that is the perfect entry point, because that man did something, and I came as I grew older to understand what he was doing. What he was doing was a pattern of attempted conditioning, directed especially at young black males, to undermine their self-esteem, to clearly, at least at this point, clearly, and see, because he would have hit me in the past, with impunity. But he was in a constrained circumstance, so this is where he is doing his bit for maintaining the old order. And the fact that my initial response was to treat it like it was a really bad joke, I guess in some ways was the best response, rather than just pure outright anger and me picking up something and hitting him and, punching him in the mouth, which is what I wanted to do. And I think part of me I remember for a long time what his name was, and then it evanesced. And I think that it had to, because I wanted to probably hurt him very badly. Yeah. I wanted, at the very least, when I became big and strong and scary, I wanted to be in his physical presence and say, oh, by the way, I'm that child you're abused. And no, we're going to have a one-sided conversation here. I'm going to tell you what the impact of that was. I mean, nothing you said was compelling, was great enough to make me question my humanity. But the fact that you were willing to abuse a child has always angered me enormously.
Yeah.
And if I had been my father, I would have been well served to come in and kick the dog shit out of you.
Sure.
And that, of course, would have gotten me jailed and probably for a long period of time.
Right.
Because once I started, I would probably not stop, knowing very well that
it's all over anyway.
Go to jail.
Yeah,
you
go to jail.
Reason for me to go to jail.
Right. So,
but that, of course, was one of the things that helped to propel me to want to be involved in civil rights activities, and by 1965, I had risen to the presidency of the NAACP Youth Council, which is a fairly hallowed position in Oklahoma civil rights circles.
I can well imagine.
I was not contacted because they probably didn't know how to get a hold of me at the time of Clara's death, Clara Luper, that is. business.
Mm-hmm.
Because it turned out, I was admonished about this later, that I was supposed to be down on the floor with the family, because all of the youth council presidents were grouped together, and I saw some of my old friends were down there coming in from all over the world, as they were to honor her
Mm-hmm.
at the Cox Center.
Okay.
That was about the only place big enough to get all the people. I don't know, there was probably 10,000 people there or more. But in 1965, there was a little bit of a problem with a business down in Lawton called Dodo Amusement Park. It adamantly would it had a large pool, swimming pool, and it wouldn't admit blacks to the park, or at least to the swimming pool area.
Mm-hmm.
And this was after the passage of 65 of the public accommodations law in 64. It also coincided with a decree that had been issued by Secretary of Defense Bob McNamara, which did not allow any military personnel or any civilian personnel of military facilities to frequent businesses that discriminated on the basis of race. So the business was taken. It lasted for a number of years because they were very adamant racists. So we started a march to Dodo Amusement Park to protest their practices at noon at the state capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked from noon, and it was probably about 6, I don't know. Yeah, it's probably about 6 o'clock.
Uh-huh.
And we are on H.E. Bailey, roughly parallel with the town of Newcastle.
Uh-huh.
And I know this much. I heard the bullet before I heard the report.
Right.
And when I heard the report, I knew exactly. And that was first. I think there were 3 shots fired, if I remember correctly. And we were eating gravel.
Yeah. Jesus.
And I can remember when I finally laying there with gravel in my mouth and on my hands skinned up. I tried to stand up, and the adrenaline and fear was so great that I couldn't get up my feet. And I don't know if it'd be fair to say I was scared to death, but I know I was deeply and in shock, recognizing that that person was not shooting over our heads, but luckily the curvature of the earth benefited us at that moment. Well, the highway patrol came over, picked us all up, and I rode in the car. And good God, I was trying to remember. It's such a Patrick O'Malley was an attorney in Tulsa, and as you can tell, there's an Irish American.
Yeah.
Well, he still had an Irish brogue. And I felt very comforted by him because, remember, I had that positive sense of Bill, the Irishman that owned the
poultry store.
Poultry store, yeah. And I think I must have related that story to him as well as we were driving to Lawton, because the march was suspended then because the sense was they couldn't protect.
Yeah.
And the shots at least came from a mile to three quarters to a mile away. And there was no way they were going to figure out who did the shooting. And then they would be gone before they could get there anyway.
And this made you make some decisions, you said.
Oh, yeah. Well, after I calmed down, I was angry at being so frightened.
Sure.
I guess a little man moment there. But I also became somber. And, you asked the question, well, am I willing to put my life on the line? And the answer was yes. The answer was there was no option there.
Yeah.
That you couldn't let fear and intimidation. You couldn't allow this sick behavioral pattern to go unchallenged any longer. That there had to be something more important than just you and this little bitty you.
Right.
You know, the most selfish self aspect of you. It's not an absence of, you know, you don't become totally non-personal, but you got to stand for something. You know, like Martin said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. But you did. I mean, for me, it was this is what grandmother raised me and mom raised me to be. Am I going to be this? And I know when I got home, my mom was always tough. She was not a demonstrative, I love you, baby, but I never wondered about her love for me or grandmother's. You know, and grandmother's she was just all enveloping. She was not a grab you, squeeze you, I love you, sweetie, but she was
you could deal with the benevolence because it was evident. It wasn't phony baloney.
Her presence was love.
Right.
What she did in her life, and I think it probably informed the way I did a number of things. Grandmother always cooked for more than the three of us. Mom always cooked for more than the two of us. Because we knew that there were people. And it wasn't that we had help. We were poor. Grandmother had Social Security coming in, which has made us a little stable, I think, of course. And then Mom's work.
Yeah.
And then at age 12, my work. Because I was splicing, doing civil rights stuff, would go into work.
And so over 50 years later, you are working, and I come and see you on Sunday mornings, and I have for the last at least 13 years or more. And you'll say, I had to school somebody else again. That's not how you put it, but that's generally like the gist of it. Is it?
Well, it's a definitional thing.
And and we better wrap it up in 5 minutes or so, but or even less. But if you wouldn't mind, just tell me, like, when it is somebody comes in and they're kind of saying, no, but, you know, the Republican Party is not racist. And you're like, yeah, but whatever you may not be feeling towards me or somebody else of my background, you are reflecting a platform that was founded in white supremacism.
Yeah, well, it is, the thing is, I had another exchange the other day having to do with Ben Carson. And Ben Carson is the soup du jour. And I understand psychologically why a number of people, especially those who have not been policy friends of mine and mine, of me and mine, over the last few years, are so attached to him. It's just some same reason that some truly bigoted people I saw really just loved my cousin JC.
Yeah,
and part of this started when I thought through exactly what JC's position was on a number of these things. You know, he's characterized as conservative, but all public policy positions denude in certain ways. When legislation is written, especially legislation that deals with the allocation of resources, it's pretty clear in advance that we know who's going to benefit and who's not going to benefit. These things are known. Now, the general public sees these as general, universal, and sometimes they are. It's like the building of, what was it, the B-2 bomber? It was universal. There was vigorous in every one of the 435 congressional districts. Some part of that $2 billion plane was manufactured or consulted or in each of those congressional districts. So there was a spread there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some got a lot more than others.
Oh, yeah.
But there was a conscious effort to make sure that every district. Now,
but that's the exception to the rule, is what you're saying,
oh,
right?
Well, no, that used to be the way the system was constructed. And this is why, when I critique the modern fiscal policy of right-wing republicanism, I always suggest, and I think rightly, that it is clearly designed to aid some and to injure others. These are the people who want to significantly cut the income to government and the expenditure by government, except in the areas of national defense. Now, it just so happens that the vast majority, at least in terms of expenditure, of national defense, both in terms of the construction of defense weapon systems,
mm-hmm.
the deployment of personnel,
mm-hmm.
the existence of bases where this personnel are deployed, happen to be in the South, Southwest, and the West.
Mm-hmm.
Direct correlation to where many of these people come from.
Yeah.
And when I hear them say fiscal conservatism, or the biggest joke around is to hear Jim Emhoff talk about being a small government Republican. He is the water carrier for big oil and one of the most vigorous proponents of the larger military expenditures you can have, which someone needs to point out to him that the military expenditure is the largest expenditure in government, which means you can't be a small government person and be a military person.
You know something? I have a feeling I really, if I don't get over to my job in approximately 7 minutes from now, I'm going to be in trouble, and it's about a 4-minute drive.
Yes.
So in the next 60 seconds, if you can, tell me, have you ever had the opportunity or the experience of getting somebody to recognize right in front of you how they've been swallowing their right-wing bullshit from the media and all this, and they come to have some kind of epiphany on the fact that there's an unchecked white supremacism informing their every move and belief?
Well, I don't think people flip that way.
Okay.
But I will tell you that the young man that I had the conversation with had never heard. He said, well, I don't think he's a racist and a bigot. And I'm going, you don't understand definition.
Right.
White supremacy doesn't have any. It has to do with race, but it has much more to do with outcomes, with a belief in a certain
allocation of resources, or
right. Decision making, allocation of resources, benefits, or whatever.
It's not. Oh, excuse me, sir. You just stepped on my foot on the sidewalk. Yeah. Fuck you, motherfucker.
I would like to believe, because as the young man left, he was not as certain as when he first spoke.
Yeah, right.
And I will. Yeah. I'm more than willing to engage, but I'm not willing to say, because there wasn't an intent to be a bigot, that the impact, which by the way, the designers of the concept are bigots.
Right.
The designers of the policy are bigots. They do understand how negative the impact will be.
Sure.
And they believe that is okay.
It's the manifest destiny and such.
Yeah, well, however they want. And they will never admit that they are animated by their own sense of their own superiority or the superiority of the culture that they come from or whatever.
Yeah, Mormons aren't racist or anything. They just didn't allow there to be black preachers in their fucking midst until 1977 or something. It was well after the Oddsmans had hit it big. And we go from there. We've got more on politicians and this and that and the other, and it gets very complicated fast. And unfortunately, I'm going to be late for work if I don't leave. I apologize because it goes on, but I can't thank you enough once again, Ron King. Everyone.
We'll talk again.
All right, thanks. You're listening to the Beau Show with guest Ron King. We'll see you later. We'll see you later. We'll see you later.